Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Powering the Web with Delphi, a panel here on the third day of DelphiCon 2020. I'm joined by Bruno Fiorenz and Dr. Holger Flick. We're going to talk to you about the TMS Web Core and answer questions about how to employ Delphi in web applications. We'll start with introductions. Dr. Flick, if you would go ahead and talk about yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Also welcome from me. My name is Holger Flick, and I'm here today as the Chief Evangelist of TMS Software, presenting TMS Web Core, one of the solutions to power the web with Delphi. And I'm joined by the Chief Technical Officer and CEO from TMS Software, Bruno Fiorenz.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everyone attending this webinar. It's my pleasure to be here and to answer any questions you might have concerning WebCore. To introduce myself, I started actually in '86 with Object Pascal programming with Turbo Pascal. Then, of course, jumped onto Delphi in '95, and ever since, I would say I have devoted my professional life to it.
All right, and I think we'll start right away with an introduction about TMS Web Core, listing its key features, how you can get started, and then we can go from there with the other frameworks and questions. Welcome to Powering the Web with Delphi. This session is divided into several sections, and I'm going to introduce you to TMS Web Core so that you will power the web and Delphi using TMS Web Core. My name is Holger Flick, and I'm the Chief Evangelist of TMS Software. At the end of the session, I'll try to answer all your questions, and I'll get support from our CEO and CTO, Bruno Fiorenz. The most common problem is to find the right tool to get the job done. And as the session says, we want to develop applications or client applications for the web. So let's think about what you as a Delphi developer are looking for. You're looking for rapid application development for web client applications. And also you want to fulfill the requirements that you have an object-oriented programming language like Delphi, that you still can use rapid application development principles like the component-based approach, and that you have a ready-to-use toolkit at your side that you can quickly build user interfaces with the controls given in that toolkit, that you have access to web services of any kind, be it XML, JSON, and also that you have already pre-built components that you can use for popular cloud services like Google Drive, Google Maps, Microsoft Azure, and so on. For the web, there's a lot of JavaScript out there. JavaScript frameworks and libraries should be easy to integrate into your solution. Finally, deployment is always an issue, because if you consider development time, most of the time you forget the time for deployment, and it has to be quicker than expected. So Xcopy deployment, meaning you just copy the files onto web server, is preferred. At this stage, I can tell you to look no farther, because TMS Web Core is your solution that fulfills all those criteria. In addition to the list that I just presented, TMS Web Core integrates into the IDE, the Integrated Development Environment of Red Studio or Delphi. You can also use the rapid application development approach with forms and frames and dozens of visual and non-visual controls. As programming language, of course, you use Delphi or Object Pascal. The web development framework is called TMS Web Core. The base of each web client application are pages, or in Delphi terminology, forms. With TMS Web Core, you have multiple options how to build your pages. The rapid application development approach is exactly as you're used to it from Delphi. You have a tool palette with components, and you drop these components or controls on your form, you compile the project, run the project, and you get your running application in the web. Here on the slide you see the controls that are on a form in the Delphi Form Designer, and on the right you see the running web client application in the Chrome web browser. Just as you're used to from building desktop applications, you can double-click on the button and implement the source code. What happens if the button is clicked? You have other events that you're used to, like on change, and so on. Just as with desktop applications, you have the same or similar set of events and methods available to make changes or react to user interaction. TMS Web Core is heavily based on the VCL when it comes to the user controls. For example, this button is called TWeb button and also has an on-click, on-double-click event, and it has a caption property, a name property, and so on. Obviously, a Delphi desktop application does not look like modern web pages. For this purpose, you can select a mixed approach. You can add style sheets and additional HTML to your forms and integrate your form that you designed in the Delphi Form Designer into this layout. Here you see on the left side the very same form from the previous slide, but the form is integrated and styled using cascading style sheets, but it is also integrated into a template. So you see that with TMS Web Core, you have a strict separation of HTML, CSS, and your application logic and the form design in the Delphi Form Designer. The final option is to only use the Delphi Form Designer to interact with the controls that you use inside of your page and use a template that is purely based on web design. You have the option, for example, to download any of these templates that you see on this slide from creativetim.com and then integrate your form into this template. TMS Web Core makes it easy that you can concentrate on the application logic because you can use Delphi and known Delphi events and Delphi methods that you've known for years. And also legacy source code can immediately be used on the web. Before I show you a couple of examples for the form design, let me also tell you what kind of application types are available. First of all, we have the classic web client application. That is a normal web application that you would call a web page. It is separated from an installable mobile application for iOS and Android, a so-called progressive web application. These kinds of applications have become known through Google, and they have the characteristic that they actually download on your mobile device, and nowadays they also download on your desktop browser. That means if you get disconnected from the internet, you can still use these mobile applications on your device, and that remedies one of the major downsides of web client applications because sometimes being connected to the internet is just not possible. TMS Web Core offers installable desktop applications through the Electron framework. You build a web application and the framework converts them to desktop applications for Windows, macOS, and Linux. Just be aware, in order to create a macOS application, you actually need a Mac computer, and this is a restriction from Apple and not from TMS Web Core. However, on the Windows platform, you can create binaries for Linux. So without further ado, let's have a look at some examples that have been created with TMS Web Core. This is Delphi 10.4 Sydney with the latest release of TMS Web Core installed. Creating a web application is easy because it integrates completely into the Delphi IDE. So using File, New, Other, go into TMS Web, you get all the different application types that are available. Let's simply create a TMS Web application, click OK, and everything will be set up for you. Inside of every web application with TMS Web Core, you'll find the landing page. Normally you rename this to index.html, and you get the different forms as Pascal units. Each Pascal unit not only has the DFM file, but also the HTML file for additional design elements that you want to express with style sheets, CSS style sheets, and HTML. You have components and controls to link this HTML to the form designer. As mentioned in the tool palette, you find dozens of controls that are ready and come with the product. Just to give you an example for the rapid application development, we drop an edit control, a button, we change the caption of the button to time, exclamation mark, change the name of the web edit to txt time, change the text to nothing. And you see the property names are the property names that you're used to from the VCL. And we change the name of the button to button time. And then you have all the events. Let me expand this a little bit bigger. You have all the events that you're used to. For the button, you have on click. For the edit control, you have on change, on double click, on click, and also more sophisticated events like on enter, on exit, key down, and so on. Double clicking on the control also opens the implementation, and as you can see, this is Delphi code. And in order to show the time, we say text time dot, we have full code completion, text equals date time to string. So the regular runtime functions and procedures are also available now, and that's it. This looks pretty much like a VCL application, but as you see now, if I click run, my web browser will be launched and the application will start inside of the web. So clicking the button would show us the current time with the date, of course. With regards to deploying the app, you'll end up with the HTML file, which could be index.html, the actual application, which becomes a JavaScript application, and your form, which is Unit 1. And you can see it right here. Unit 1 becomes Unit 1 HTML, and the project becomes JavaScript, and the project HTML. So these are the three files that you have to deploy to the web server, and this will give you additional debug information in case you want to debug on your web server. Time is rather short in this session. I just showed you the example for the form design just using controls, no HTML at all. And let's pick the one where you use the Delphi form designer primarily, but add a couple of HTML and cascading style sheets. Included in the TMS Web Core package is the Bootstrap example. You find it in the demo folder, in the basics folder, and then the next directory is called Bootstrap. Here you see that all the controls can be mapped to standard controls like TWeb edit, TWeb button. You've seen them both in action already. And then here we have a TWeb memo, which behaves similar to a memo. And here we have the TWeb combo box, again, very similar to the VCL combo box, and a label. What is new in this example is the fact that these controls are actually mapped to element class names, so to CSS classes. And if you look at the Bootstrap framework, you find out that the form control class is used for edits and for other elements of forms. And buttons, for example, always get the button class. And button primary means it's a primary button. If you press enter, it is also being executed. You would call it in the VCL the default button. Let's run this. You see that the corners are round, and as soon as you switch between the different elements, they are highlighted with zero work. You just use what is being provided by the cascading style sheet or the JavaScript library, Bootstrap in this case. Let's add a couple of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there you go. So the numbers are added to the memo. And if you look at the implementation, as a VCL developer, you could have written that yourself. You basically say combo box items add the text of the web edit, and the same thing you do for the web memo. You add to the lines of the web memo the text of the web edit, and that's it. So there's really nothing very special about it. The only difference is that you need to learn the different classes from the style that you want to use. This can also be a company-specific style. This doesn't have to be Bootstrap or something that is open to the public. This can be a very specific style that is used inside of your organization. And also, in addition to the style sheet elements, you can also add additional HTML, as you've seen in this example. Finally, the best way to do design as a developer is if you ask a professional web designer to do the design for you. And TMS Web Core makes it really easy to integrate your application into that existing design. Here you see the working application with a template that we downloaded from CreativeTem. This template even offers a responsive design, meaning it adapts to the size of the device that is being used on. For example, if you open this page on an iPhone, you wouldn't see this left menu bar, it would be collapsed. As you can see here, this is where the menu is. And if you make it wider again, the form changes its appearance completely. This is all integrated in the HTML template. This is nothing you have to do. If you see the application now, what it looks like in the form designer, you'll be surprised. You only focus on the controls that your application has to deal with. In this case, the order number and the order date, and of course the control, the button to execute a search. If you compare this with the resulting application, you really could focus on the elements here and didn't have to do any of the colors of the fonts. It's all done by the web designer. And you might ask yourself, how is this all done? Well, TMS Web Core makes it easy to link your design to the source code. First of all, and there's tutorials and videos available, there's control binding, which looks what is included inside of the HTML file, what is included inside of my form, and you can map it to each other. Also available is control sync, which will create controls inside of your Delphi form designer for elements that the web designer has designed. For example, if you get a form from a web designer, these controls will be created for you automatically inside of the Delphi form designer. And also the link will be set up, meaning if you make changes in your source code to that element inside of the template will of course also be affected. But don't worry, your application will not be just something that adds to the HTML or CSS. You can also use frames to define your menu as it is shown here. And then you also have the so-called web element action list, where you can define actions for elements that you can find inside of an HTML template. So TMS Web Core makes it really easy to use existing templates, existing web pages, and add application logic to that. We all know that we're good Delphi developers, but the web design should be done most of the time by professional web designers. And TMS Web Core makes this communication or cooperation very easy. If you want to learn more about TMS Web Core, there's multiple references available. First of all, the documentation with more than 500 pages, plenty of tutorial videos and blog posts on the TMS software webpage. There is a training course by Wagner Landgraf and also our Brazilian partners. And from my side, I wrote a book in German and English language called TMS Web Core, Web Application Development with Delphi, and it's available worldwide on Amazon.com as a paperback. This is the starting URL to find all what I just mentioned, web.tmssoftware.com. Finally, Bruno Ferenc and I will be joining the roundtable that is available as part of this session. We're eagerly awaiting your questions and will be happily answering as many questions as we can get in. Thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, Jackson Gomez here. And today we'll be talking a little bit about IntraWeb as part of the Powering the Web with Delphi session. This presentation was prepared by Chad Hoover, but due to unforeseen circumstances, I am your presenter today. Chad Hoover, I think that everyone knows him. He's the creator of IntraWeb, Crosstalk, Cosmos, and many other projects. Jackson Gomez, your presenters. I am a former A to Z employee. I'm also an active member of the Brazilian Delphi community, and I am also the creator of the user security component. We'd like to thank Jim for the invitation for us to be here. And let's start. And for those that are not familiar with IntraWeb, let me do a little introduction for you. IntraWeb is the VCL equivalent for the web, okay? And it's basically a web framework for building web apps with Delphi. IntraWeb main goal is to close the gap between the Delphi developers and web development, because we know that web development can be a little bit intimidating, especially that if you're coming from the old way of developing apps, like we started with Delphi 1. Some of us started with Turbo Pascal, and I know that I've been there as well, because web development is a little bit intimidating. So IntraWeb comes here to close this gap for you. Especially because with IntraWeb, you don't need to learn a lot about HTML, JavaScript, and Cascade associates. That's the core of web development. And Also, IntraWeb does all these complicated things for you, and everything's under the hood, so you don't need to worry about how to write an HTML page or JavaScript library or how to use Cascade Style Sheets. This is the basic, okay? Of course, you can, when you're developing a web app with IntraWeb, you can dive into all these things, HTML, JavaScript, but you don't need to. As with any tool out there, there's a learning curve to it, okay? But with IntraWeb, this learning curve is relatively smooth. Why I say that? Because you will basically be doing what you are already doing when you're developing a desktop app or a client-server app. You'll be dragging and dropping components, using data modules, reports, threads, and basically everything that you use with Delphi. Even you'll be able to access the Windows API on the server side. Okay. One main point in IntraWeb is that it allows you to reuse most of your Delphi code base on your web apps. This is particularly important when you have a very large code base, as you don't want to start from scratch, of course. So you can use IntraWeb to extend any client-server app that you have and add an extra web module for it, or you can also develop a full version of your app on the web using IntraWeb. And all your code base can be shared between your client-server app and the web version of your app that was built with IntraWeb. Now I want to show you guys some screenshots showing some IntraWeb user interface controls, just for you to have an idea. Okay. This first screenshot shows a tree view, and also a lot of other controls like checkboxes, text boxes, buttons, and even a link. This one shows IntraWeb grid mixed with data tables. I suppose most of you are familiar with the famous data tables web component. Here we have some fancy buttons, and here we have some DB lookups, database lookups, and here we have the famous fishfact demo ported to IntraWeb. And here we have this very same fishfact demo open in the Delphi IDE. As you can see, you have a DB grid selected and all the properties are on the object inspector, as we are used to. It's very simple to change any property on any IntraWeb component. So where we are today, we currently have two versions being developed in parallel, and the main version is IntraWeb 15, which is the version being deployed to our customers. We also have version 14 under maintenance mode, but we may have some new releases when there is something very sensitive that needs to be fixed, and our customers can't upgrade to the latest version of IntraWeb. Version 17 is being under development since 2018, but schedule has been severely altered by COVID, and we needed to make some adjustments. We added several new major features in 15, and also some of the new features planned to 17 were implemented in IntraWeb 15 as well. Because of the limited session time, we're going to show you some screenshots instead of live demos. So let's have a look at some of these new features available in IntraWeb 15. So let's talk about HTTP deployment. The most common ways of deploying an IntraWeb app are as a service, when you use the embedded in the web server, and as IZAPI when you want to execute your app under IIS. Deploying as a service is straightforward. You just need to install the service and execute it. And deploying as IZAPI requires a bit more of work. It's a little bit more complicated. IntraWeb 15 adds HTTPCs as a deployment option, which is way easier to deploy your apps. HTTPCs is a web server that is the foundation of IIS, and it's really fast because it removes all the fat that IIS has. Deploying an IntraWeb app using HTTPCs requires no code change from your side. You just need to modify 2 lines of code in your project file. One of the main points of HTTPCs is that you can have several IntraWeb apps sharing the same IP and the same port, very similar to what you have when you deploy on IIS. This is a bit different when you deploy as a service, because when you deploy as a service, the application takes one of the ports for itself. On HTPCs, you don't need to install anything because it's already part of the Windows kernel, and it's very simple to deploy as well. You just need to install the application, your IntraWeb application as a service, and it's my favorite way of deploying apps right now. One of the recent changes that has a huge impact on IntraWeb is the full AJAX support. For those familiar with IntraWeb, you know that we have AJAX even before AJAX was a thing, through partial updates, but our AJAX support had some limitations. IntraWeb would need to render all controls at once, and you could make changes to these controls like changing captions, enabling or disabling some controls, making these controls visible or invisible, etc. But not all controls had AJAX support, like our grids and our tree view. And creating a new control required a full page render, which is a little bit inconvenient these days. And for now on, you can create any control using our async events, even full frames. And you have a smoother UI, you have less processing time on the server side because you only create UI blocks on demand, and as a consequence, you end up optimizing data transfer from the server to the browser. Another area that has some enhancements is the async callbacks. Using async callbacks in IntraWeb, you can execute any Delphi code from your IntraWeb app directly from JavaScript. This is exactly what IntraWeb does when you click a button on your page. You have a JavaScript code on the browser side that triggers a particular code on the server side. This is useful when you want to extend what IntraWeb already offers to you. It's very useful when you want to develop your own controls or integrate with any third-party JavaScript library. The example on the screen shows a JavaScript call that will execute the multiply procedure on the server side. And before, we had only one signature, one method signature, and now we have 4 different ones. It gives you more possibilities. For more information on how to use async callbacks, please check our documentation. And we also have some new components that were released on IntraWeb 15. The first one is the IW reCAPTCHA. That's pretty useful when you want to avoid boots on accessing your web pages. Here we have the component being used on some IntraWeb pages. And here we have the component on the designer, so you can view some properties like the secret key and the side key. Here we have the new IntraWeb grids that had support to jQuery grids, including a data-aware version of these grids. Also, we have enhancements on our IW edit control, adding support to native HTML5 input types, as you can see on the screenshot. And Bootstrap support. The Bootstrap support's been around for a while, and it's possible to do that using our template engine. And I'm going to show you some screenshots that were sent by some IntraWeb users, showing how you can have very beautiful user interfaces using Bootstrap integrated with IntraWeb. Here we have another one. Graphs and data tables as well. And we also have the new IntraWeb Certificate Manager. This is a tool that allows you to request and install Let's Encrypt free SSL certificates. You can generate self-signed development SSL certificates with easy. You can also install SSL certificates for HTTP SYS applications on Windows. This tool is free for commercial use, so please have a look at our website for instructions on how to use it. Also, some security enhancements that we have are transparent CSP, transparent cores, and also MAC sessions per IP addresses. So let's talk a little bit about IntraWeb 17. 17 is a new version that's currently being developed. We know that a lot of people are waiting for this version, and we know that we are late, but we've been hit pretty hard for COVID, and that's why we are late on that. But we will talk about estimates at the end, okay? So what is 17? 17, what is different on IntraWeb 17? We have a new page model in IntraWeb 17 that was designed from scratch. This is the new model that you're going to use from now on to your new pages. But don't worry that the new 17 model will be able to coexist with the current 15 model. Think of 17 as a new UI, or a new way of developing your UI. The focus here is that we wanted to make the UI design a lot easier, but of course 17 is much more than that. 17 uses TypeScript instead of JavaScript. And what are the differences between 17 and 15? On the 15 module, UI is saved on the DFN format, and the translation happens on the server. When we are translating the UI interface from DFM to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, it happens on the server side. For 17, the UI is saved using a new format called IWML, and this translation happens on the browser. You can already imply the advantages here, because this translation happens on the browser. We use less CPU on the server side. We also have less data being transferred to the browser, and our rendering engine is way simpler. As 17, we use DOM manipulation for that. Our time is a little bit short today, so let me show you a short video of the designer integrated into the IDE.
Hello everyone. I just want to give you a quick update on where we are with the designer. As you can see here, I have an empty page, and what I'm going to do is first I'm going to put a layout into the page. I'm going to use a fixed layout, and the fixed layout allows me to drag and drop things and put them at a specific position, like an X and Y, very much like you're used to in a normal app. So select the fixed, and I'm going to drag it over onto the page, and now I have a layout inside of the page. And then I can take individual buttons and I can put them wherever I want, or edit boxes or whatever. I can also put other layouts inside of other layouts. So let's take a quick look. Let's take, for example, a simple stack. And we're just going to put it in the middle here. Now we can't really see it because there's nothing in it yet. So there's a couple things we can do. We can come up here and hover, and we'll see things pop up. So now I can see the simple stack, and I can select it. Now let's start to put some things in the button. So if I drag it here, it's going to stop right here. But if I put it in the simple stack, it's going to go into the simple stack. And I could also do it by dropping it up here. But the cool thing is, see, if I drop it here, it's going to go on the fixed. But if I bring it over the layout, you can see I can position it very easily within the simple stack. And so this overrides the XY, and we get this type of layout. Just a quick addendum, I forgot to show this earlier, so I'm just adding this on to the end of the video here. But earlier we just showed buttons, but of course there's checkboxes and edits and all the normal stuff that you're used to, as well as much, much more. And this isn't even everything yet. This is just what we're showing right now. But for example, if you want to add a chart, you can select the chart, and then you can just bring it over and drop it just like you can anything else. And of course you can data bind this and use it just like any other IntraWeb control. And that's it for today. Thank you.
We are reaching the end of the video, so let's talk about timeline now. We are 85% complete on IntraWeb 17. We were firmly set for August 2020 release, but as we said before, the COVID has impacted us a lot, but we expect IntraWeb 17 to be ready early 2021 at best. Okay? Thank you very much, guys, for your time. And if you have any questions, please.
Hi, this is Daniele Teti, and I'm here to talk about Delphi MVC framework. What's Delphi MVC framework? The MVC framework has been designed to be a powerful and easy to use open source framework for web solution, really any kind of web solution. And now, after 10 years, almost 10 years of development, is the most popular Delphi library on GitHub. Really the most popular. It supports REST and JSON RPC. It really supports REST because they support the Richardson Maturity Model level 3. so it's really REST. It's not just a buzzword. The MVC framework supports also push notification using server-sent events and provides an optional MVC active record implementation to access data in a really object-oriented way. So you don't have anymore your logic on the dataset events or sparse here and there. Just really object-oriented using active record. You can use anything you want, but the framework provides active records. It is standard compliant because the clients can use any technology. We'll see more about this in a minute. Delphi MVC framework is also used in some of the biggest Delphi web systems in the world, with hundreds of thousands of connections per second. Also, Delphi MVC framework is completely unit testing, with more test adding for each release. And it works from Delphi 10 Seattle to Delphi 10.4 Sydney and has more than 10 years of development with 32 contributors, active contributors to the framework from all over the world. It's really a community project. It's really, it has a really good documentation, and each feature has a sample, specific sample for each feature. There is a support group, the official support group. It's free. It's on Facebook with a lot of active members. There is also a commercial support backed by the B10 professional for training, custom development, and mentoring, and so on. You can write to professionals at b10.it, and is trusted. The Delphi MVC framework is trusted by its user. It's trusted by thousands of Delphi developers all around the world, which use Delphi MVC framework every day, really. Also, Delphi MVC framework can be seen as a container of all your business logic. The MVC framework is a server-side solution, and the real power is not to be tied to a particular client technology, which can change very fast. It's possible to change the thin client without much effort, maintaining all the business logic and the real value of the system there on the server, using the MVC framework. What about the deployments available for Delphi MVC framework solutions? You can deploy your system as a console application, as a user interface application, as a Windows service as Linux daemon, and also as Apache module compiled for Windows or Linux, and IIS is API for Windows. What is the most common development cycle? You can usually develop as a console application, and then when your system starts to be usable, you can deploy as a Windows service or as a Linux daemon for small mid systems. And if you have instead a very big system, I suggest to deploy as Apache module or IIS as API. Is it complicated to do such kind of different deployments? No, it's really easy. Why I should care about this different deployment? You can also not care about it, but using this approach, there is an easy development and debug phase, and you can leverage all your Delphi debugger knowledge, and you get the best from both worlds: easy development and full-flagged web server to host your model in production. Using Delphi MVC framework, you don't have any vendor lock-in. You choose your client technology. You can use client technology from Delphi solutions or from some open source projects, some commercial project from TMS, what you want. You can use mobile with FireMonkey, but you can also use solution from Node.js or Progressive Web App, or Angular, React, Python, Java, Electron, .NET, anything, really. You are free to use any client technology you want. So this is a small picture of what can be a Delphi MVC framework architecture. You have your Delphi MVC framework service, which provides REST or JSON RPC APIs, and you can use such APIs from desktop application, web browser, mobile apps, other service, other kind of service, for example, Internet of Things or embedded devices, really anything. And Delphi MVC framework, being a normal Delphi program, can access any kind of data sources, such databases, NoSQL databases, web service, hardware, really anything, what you want. These are the communities for the MVC framework. There is a big community, the official one, but there are also other communities for other language available, and also for in Telegram groups. This is the official guide. The MVC framework is not complicated to grasp, to understand how it works. However, the guide is perfect to leverage the real power of Delphi MVC framework, to really understand what's going on in the framework. The guide is all what you need to fastly go beyond the basics, and the official guide is in English, but is available also in Portuguese, and soon will be available in Spanish. Okay, but talk is cheap. Show me the code. Okay, we'll see a couple of demo, very simple demo, for a RESTful API using dataset, using the same API developed using an MVC Active Record, and then an example of interoperability with JSON RPC API with Delphi and Python. Let's go. The first demo we see is a simple REST API using dataset. Here we have our controllers. This is a single controller which publish this API customer without params, or I can get a single customer by ID, I can create a new customer. These are the attributes, the RTTI attributes used by the MVC framework to understand which action, which controller must be called. In this case, I'm going to use, as I told, a dataset. So, calling API and customer here in get customer, I can write this code. Simply created a new data model. Data model is this. Just created a new data model and open the query using a custom SQL, and then use this render. This render call just takes the data, in this case a dataset, and render it as JSON. This is a really simple approach. This can be good for some simple stuff. Let's go here with Postman. This is the call we are going to issue to our service, and then clicking send here, I get my data. It's quite simple, can be good for small application that needs to use dataset. Let's go on. The second demo we are going to see is the same API, the same endpoint, but using Active Record. As you can see, the code is very, very simpler than before, and all the logic can be injected directly into the object. So here we have the customer controller with the same API, but see the code how it's really, really simple, because here we are going to use this entity. So the body is read as this entity and just inserted in the database. The get by customer ID just does a select by ID, mapping directly into the customer. The same also for all method. This is where TMVC Active Record is working. It's just a mapper, quite evoluted, but it's just a mapper, where I can map a table and some field on the database and this table directly on my field. And there are also a lot of methods that you can override to change the behavior of your object and your API. From the outside, for all the clients, it works in the same way. Still with the same call, we get the same result. And this is a really good approach, the approach based on active record. The third demo we are going to see is a JSON RPC API. Let's start. We have the web model here created by the wizard, and here we are going to use this publish object method, and this is a delegate which instantiates my object that I want to expose as API at this endpoint, so that every methods in its object will be exposed to the API. This is the object. As you can see, all the public method here, so subtract, reverse string, get customer, and so on, are automatically exposed. As you can see, this is a plain Delphi class. There are no link with anything, with stuff internal, so you need to inherit from something. No, just a plain object. Okay, just going to run it like this. I have my API ready here. I can switch to on this subtract. This is a standard JSON RPC message with the version, the name of the method, the parameters, and the ID because it's a request. Just click send, and here I get my result. I can obviously change params and get a new result. The same approach can be used also by our clients. So here I have a simple client, in this case it's Delphi, and here just can use a JSON RPC request, which is just an helper to wrap and send a correct JSON RPC message, so that I can say here which method I want to call on the server, request an ID, adding the parameters by position, and execute the request. Here we can run it and just call the subtract to have the result. Here with this code I can call also the subtract using the name parameter. So this is the name of the parameter on the server, and just have the same result. And here I can also get a dataset as a result. This get customers, this method on the server returns a dataset, so that I can just hit get customer and get my dataset using also some kind of filtering code greater than 3, and just get the dataset filtered. JSON RPC is a standard technology, so that I can use it also with other kind of clients. As I told before, JSON RPC and REST are standard technologies, so can be invoked everywhere. And the MVC framework does not inject any kind of dependencies about frameworks, about something stuff that is required on the client. In fact, this is a plain Python client for a JSON RPC service. In this case, they are using libraries from some Python libraries, and we are going to call this server, this JSON RPC server implemented in Delphi using standard Python code. This is the script that's going to be executed, which is going to call the same method subtract with 10 and 3 as parameters, and I get the same result because it's just standard. And you can do the same thing using JavaScript, using C#, using Delphi, using any language you want. Back to the slide, let's go some success cases. The MVC framework is trusted and used by thousands of developers around the world, so there are a lot of success cases out there. But just see two of them. The first one is a software which is similar to TeamViewer for remote support, and the MVC framework is used for user handling, licensing, dispatching, server handling, and so on. And in this case, the MVC framework is deployed as Apache clusters and handles up to 10,000 remote system connection per hour, which can count to millions of connection per month. The clients are from hundreds of countries, more than 100 countries, and the clients, the software clients, are from Windows, macOS, Android, and iOS. It is very nice to see how it works. The second success case is a big ERP, and this DMVC framework is used for handling the API calls. There are a lot of API calls. Just imagine a huge database with hundreds of tables, hundreds of fields, store procedures, trigger, and so on. There are 500 instances in a server farm, one for each customer, and there are many concurrent users for each customer in the working hour. In this case, the clients are web, so JavaScript, and desktop with Delphi. Okay, let's go some links. Here you have the project GitHub repository, this session GitHub repository, and also the link to buy the book, the official guide in English, Portuguese, and Spanish. And also, if you need training, custom development, consultancy, or just a suggestion, you can write to professional@bittime.it. Okay, thank you.
So a lot of questions here. A couple of people commented that they were surprised that there were so many options available for web development with Delphi. This is some of the best solutions, most popular solutions for web development with Delphi, but there are other ones. These were the three I picked for this session, which I think are great. And I think they represent three different ways of coming at web development and could potentially be used together as well. So we've done individual sessions on some of these tools in the past, but we're certainly open to doing more individual sessions on these as well for a deeper dive. But yeah, lots of stuff here. Let's see. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. There's a lot of people from all around the world coming in. That's always exciting to see. So it was a comment here about what is the difference between the different tools. So part of my thinking in selecting these three tools, and then I will let you guys chime in if you want to correct me, is that they kind of represent three different ways of coming at developing for the web. The MVC framework is mostly focused on the back end, right? The REST services portion of it. TMS Web Core is mostly focused on the front end, the transpiling of the object Pascal code into JavaScript so that you can develop the front end. And then IntraWeb, it's kind of a full stack, but in theory, you could, I suppose, even use it with the other two frameworks. So they really do represent three different ways of coming at it. And is there anything you guys would add to that description?
Yes, I was just distracted by a question though. So the difference, the one difference for TMS Web Core is that it runs on the client 100%, and that is for quite a lot of people a struggle because you can't, out of the session of a web browser that runs on the client's computer, you can't access a database server that runs inside of your company or with your provider. So you have to provide an additional backend, which is not needed with desktop applications in order to access your database. And that sometimes is a little bit difficult to understand at first.
Yeah. Let's see.
And the second thing, obviously, is the fact that everything, because we had a couple of questions here in the chat, the second thing is everything is asynchronous. Like back in the day when we were doing web development, also with other web frameworks in Delphi, things were blocking. So you could, if you wrote a line of code, you were certain that if you called a function, the execution waited and until you had the result of that function value, you were able to proceed with your coding. Nowadays, everything in the web is asynchronous. So if you, and this was the particular question here in the session, if you open a second form, the execution of your code goes on. And that is a little bit tricky at first. So you really need to use either events or anonymous methods, which are being called as soon as your form is created, and then you can pass the values back and forth between those forms. And that is a little bit tricky at first from a concept standpoint. And also, if you query your database, with, let's say, a list of customers, and the source code that you write keeps on going on. It doesn't wait for the reply of your database server to come or web service to come, because it might never arrive. So if the web browser were actively waiting for these things, it would block all the time. So that's not possible. And those are the things you have to consider that make web development a little bit more difficult, but TMS Web Core makes it easy, as it uses Delphi-specific language constructs, or I should say Object Pascal-specific language constructs like event handlers and anonymous methods to take care of that.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's top of the hour here. Thank you for everyone for being here, and thank you to our panelists for the awesome work you did in your presentations, answering questions, and in these fantastic tools that you've added to just really expand the reach of Delphi and make it really a first-class solution for the web. So thank you. Absolutely, my pleasure. And certainly we can do some more deep dives on these individually in the future as well. So we'll have to arrange that.
Yeah, email Embarcadero that you want certain webinars, and I'm sure we'll be able to provide them.
Yep.
There has to be a demand, though, right, Jim?
Yeah. We try and keep it focused on what people are looking for to answer the questions. So is a great comment here from Wilfred. Says, I would imagine every framework is suited to certain scenarios rather than one being the best at everything. I agree, and that's really one of the reasons I want to do this. Is I frequently get people like, well, which one's the best? It's like, no, there's not one that's the best. Each one has pros for different scenarios, and so you just got to pick the one that fits your scenario. And hopefully that you have some information now, and you can go out and use one of these great frameworks and take over the web. So thank you for everybody being here, and we will see you all in the next session. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.